A sense of place.
Right.
Terroir. You've talked a lot about this in your writing. What do you mean by sense of place when it comes to spirits?
Oh, good question. The way I would start that is saying I don't really believe in terroir in whiskey. I think you could apply it to mezcal, you could apply it to cognac and other brandies, but I don't think you can apply it to whiskey. Because I don't think that notion of the soil giving the flavour in the way that a vine does, or agave does, applies to barley, which you plant, in March one year and harvest, in the autumn in the same year, which has got shallow roots that aren't going to penetrate particularly deeply. And I think what terroir misses out is the human element, the cultural element. And I think a sense of place for me encapsulates not just where the whiskey is from, but how it is made, why it is made in that particular way, who has made it over the centuries, and how all of that has impacted conceivably on flavour. So it's that cultural link to location.
So you could call it cultural terroir.
Yes, I did call it cultural terroir to begin with, and then I just didn't want to use the T word.
Terror.
And I just think sense of place just allows more kind of flex, to be honest. It's kind of hard to say that a distillery in Glasgow or Edinburgh has terroir, but you can say an urban distillery in Glasgow will have a sense of place. The way that, even in blended whiskey, the way that a lot of the old blends, which started off in the 19th century, the way that they were actually built in terms of flavour was having a sense of place. John Walker used West Coast whiskies because he was on the West Coast. The Chivas brothers in Aberdeen used East Coast and Highland whiskies because that was their locale, and the styles were different. So therefore, the sense of place that these blends originally had were actually gravitating from the location of the blender shops initially. So yeah, I just think it allows you an interesting way to look at conditions, because ultimately it all comes from conditions. Any spirit comes from conditions. What is your climate? What is your geology? What grows here? That's what I'm going to be using. So you're immediately kind of locked in to that particular condition. And therefore, the human response to that is, how then do I use what grows here and manipulate it in such a way initially to suit the local community, and then further on down the road. So it allows you, I would say, this idea of the sense of place, to look deeper into this idea of conditions. It allows you to look deeper into history, why these things evolved in the ways that they evolved. So yeah, I just find it a more interesting way to look at it, because I've never really, for years, I'm very similar to you in this way, and I think we all start on our whiskey path in pretty much the same way, which is we taste the whiskey, we get obsessed with the idea of whiskey, we begin going to distilleries, and we have our notebooks or whatever, and we write down every fact and all the figures. What's the angle of the line arm? How long is the mashing cycle? And if I get the formula, I'll understand whiskey. And this is certainly what I did. I'm imposing and suggesting that's the way you did it as well.
But, no, you're spot on.
I think you're a whiskey geek, so therefore the answers are in the numbers. But after a few years, you begin to realise actually what makes a difference is the people. And the way in which that knowledge of flavour and that knowledge of how to run that distillery has changed, and how the information has been passed from one generation to the next, all the way on in this great continuum. And whiskey has changed, obviously, over the years. And you begin to realise that it doesn't exist on its own. We have this idea that, the distillery is there, whiskey is there, then the rest of life is elsewhere. And the two never connect. It's not. It's part of communities. It's part of who we are. There is a deep and rich cultural resonance in all spirits. So yeah, sense of place.
So in some ways, it's about the way things have been done in the past. Dictates the way that you would expect something to taste in the future. And would you then say that the technical setup of a distillery or the practices that go on there, whether it's like how long we fill a cask for or the shape and size of the still, are almost defined by the desired outcome of what that spirit's going to be, because that's the spirit that comes from this place.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I suppose it becomes slightly blurred over time to some extent. But, I think it is interesting to looking at Scotch whisky in particular, that we have the knowledge to be able to shift distillation, and flavour.
Yeah.
Any distillery could make, loads of different flavours if they want. But for some reason, the template has been set, and the template has been set for maybe 175, 200 years, and it has stuck to that. There's variations, it's wobbled a bit, it's changed a bit, but it's identifiably still, this distillery has been making this style of whiskey, this flavour of whiskey for a long period of time. Why is that the case? Part of it's driven by blenders, but part of it is because it's in with the breaks, it's in with, this is who we are. It's a statement of place. Yeah, a statement of place in history. And also that kind of wee bit of, perhaps, it's undoubtedly something to do with science rather than magic, but there is something really intriguing about how distilleries right next to each other, running essentially exactly the same process, will be making different flavours. And that's exciting.
Yeah.
And there's lots of areas that you can explore in biochemistry to find it out. But at its root, the pride that the people working in that distillery have in the fact that they do make something different.
Yes.
It's really important.
Even if they don't know why.
Even if you don't know why. It's really important. It's really significant. And it's good. And it's valid and it's real. It's not a contrived story. This is fact. Yeah.
So do you think it's fair to say that making spirits is a combination of science, whether you know the underlying science or not? There's obviously science taking place here.
Sure.
Culture and some artistry, although whether that comes under culture as well, I don't know. But is there a sort of artistic element to it as well?
I look at whiskey as being a craft rather than an art. A craft is replicable. Art is an individual piece. It's not replicable. This piece of art, this sculpture, this painting, whatever. This is a one-off. I'm only going to do this once. Whereas a craft is knowledge and skill being passed down from generation to generation and changing as it does, but it's replicable. So whiskey, in that respect, is a craft rather than an art. I think where the art, then these two areas kind of blur. Because at some point there will be an artistic impulse to try and use that craft to take it off in a different direction. So that
of course, is how all these cultures are developed and evolve over time, right? You have to have a certain artistic streak to evolve what is already the standard, right? To sort of break the dogma of this is how we make it. Let's try something new, and then the next generation try something new as well, or they adopt the practice that you did. So the sort of art steers the culture. The science underpins it. Yes,
yeah, exactly. You follow. Think of Japan. If you're learning ceramics or you're learning sword making or sushi or whatever, bartending, you will be working with your master. And if you're in the bar, you'll be allowed to wash and dry the glasses for 2 or 3 years. You might be allowed to make the rice eventually in sushi, so you will learn the hand movements and you will learn exactly the regime, how your master has been taught. And then at some point, you are then permitted to go, I'm going to do it slightly differently. Because you have to, because if a craft doesn't change, it dies. So you've all, today's tradition was yesterday's innovation, and today's innovation is going to be tomorrow's tradition. It always moves forward. So, and that's that spark of artistry and creativity coming in to allow that to stay alive. And it does exist in whiskey. And it could be it could be a crazy creative idea, or it could be driven by economics.
Yep.
You know, there's a whole number of different reasons, or the law, why these things have changed. But it does change, and it still takes a creative mind to be able to say, well, the law has changed. How am I going to get around this? How am I going to cope with this change in law? Or how am I going to, if the market is collapsing, how am I going to ensure that the whiskey that I make is true to what it always has been, but will be appealing to a consumer whose palate has changed?
Do you think that a great spirit has to have a strong sense of place?
I think automatically, I would argue it does have a sense of place. I think that is because that's what it's embedded in, and it's really interesting talking to distillers around the world who are now making whiskey. It could be other spirits, but let's look at whiskey. And the first thing that distiller in, it doesn't matter where they are, Norway or Vietnam or wherever, and you say, oh, you're making whiskey, and the immediate response is, yes, but we're not making Scotch. We're making single malt, but we're not making Scotch. And so therefore the next question, the follow-up question is, well, what are you making? And saying, well, we're making something from here. So the very, that initial impulse to make a single malt whiskey in Australia or New Zealand, blah, 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 around the world is, yes, and we know what the template is because the template is Scotch, but we want to make this ours. So how do we go about making it ours? And watching the evolution of these new distilleries over the past decade or so, as they begin to deepen this understanding of where they are, is really, really heartening. And you're now beginning to see those variations and those differences starting to emerge.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is. It's fundamental, I would say, to distilleries. And it's not just the preserve of, cobweb-strewn Scottish stills who've been around for all these years. It is there. You can see it manifesting itself in a new distillery today.
It always strikes me that when you get a good example of a new world whiskey, for want of a better term, that being, whiskey not made in Scotland, America, Ireland, you can continue up to Japan, however far you want to go for what old world is.
Don't forget
Canada, of course, yeah. The best ones for me are always like, wow, that really tastes like, I don't know, tropical fruits because it's mangoes because it's from Australia, or it's got in Japan, it's got some an umami note or something savory, like miso-y about it, or green tea. And you're like, well, how do they do that? Because you're not allowed to use green tea in making whiskey. You're not allowed to use mangoes. So there's this almost selection process that must be taking place through cask management, perhaps through the new make whiskey, that selects for whatever the local cuisine is somehow in the spirit itself, through fermentation, and that is remarkable because actually the tools that a whiskey maker has to play with, I mean, it does vary depending on where you are and how well it's controlled, but if you're going by EU or American law, there's not a great deal, right? If you're going to make single malt whiskey.
No. Yeah.
So, you can't start throwing fruit in there. You can't start infusing tea into it and all this kind of thing. So, I mean, I guess, do you agree with my synopsis there that there is this sort of, whether knowingly or not, there's this selection criteria that's taking place in each region, in each country, in each part of each country, that sort of chooses the thing that is most representative of, like, culinarily of that place.
Yeah, I think that the culinary link is a really, really interesting one, because if you go to the Nordics, if you go to Finland, the Kiru distillery, of which I probably mispronounced, doing rye, and you speak to the guys at Kiru, say, and why did you use rye? Well, because that's what we grew up with. It is the flavour that you grow up with because it is deeply entrenched in food. We're eating rye bread every single day. We identify with this flavour. And that's the reason that they went down that path, because if we were going to make whiskey in Finland, obviously we're going to be using rye. They could have done malt, they could have done anything else, but obviously that's where. And if you look at even elsewhere in the Nordics, the way in which a lot of the thinking, a lot of the mindset of the Nordic distiller is kind of driven by that new Nordic cuisine, that pride in local ingredients. So wanting to use what grows around them. So whether that's rye or barley or whatever, but you and also using local peat, using in Norway using Kveik yeast, so all of that sort of saying, this is where we are from. And sometimes I think it is to some degree subconscious, but again, think about Japan. You mentioned Japan because the previous book. So I'm not just going to buy this book, but the previous book, Way of Whisky, was a kind of road test of a theory that had that the thinking process, the mindset of a Japanese distiller is essentially the same as a Japanese traditional crafts person. So again, ceramics, et cetera, et cetera. And speaking to the craftspeople and then speaking to distillers without trying to force the issue, the way in which they were talking about how they approached their craft, be it whiskey or be it ceramics, it's exactly the same. So I think that within Japan there is this cultural aesthetic that is just hardwired into your system. But also, if you look at the way in which you describe Japanese whiskey, or the way I was first described Japanese whiskey on the first day I went to Japan, this transparency that they have, with that incredible intensity of flavour that they have without being aggressive. It's very pure, it's very intense, it's very complex.
And well defined as well, I would say.
Beautifully defined. And then you think, well, hang on, let's look at Japanese art, Japanese poetry, Japanese design. Okay, boom, you've got all of that. But why? What was the commercial reason for doing that? Well, that was Shinjiro Tori going, this is a whiskey that has to appeal to the Japanese palate. Mm-hmm. And if you're eating Japanese food, you're not wanting to be bluted over the head with a big, heavy Scotch style. So yes, I agree. That's a very long way of saying yes, I agree with you.
Yeah, but you did land on the commercial part in the end, which...
Well, it has to. Ultimately, it's going to be driven by economics.
Yeah. You're in New Zealand recently.
I was.
What were the sort of best manifestations of the sense of place in the spirits you tried there? What is it? Yeah. What does whiskey taste like there at the moment?
I'm really excited about New Zealand. It's really interesting in terms of New Zealand that the barley that they grow, which is essentially the same as grown across Scotland, it's a Muslim Beast Laureate, but there is something within, dare I say, the terroir of New Zealand, that the barley is actually sweeter. The Laureate is sweeter. So the whiskies have got this, all of them have this kind of linking sweetness at the back. But the way in which the distillers are beginning to explore what New Zealand is to them. So Matt Thompson from Thompson Distilleries in Auckland, using Manuka smoke.
Yes.
Which is Manuka wood, not Manuka honey.
Not burning the honey.
No, and I had a ridiculous discussion with our brand ambassador, Scotch brand ambassador, who's got, how does it just, honey just burns? No, it's wood. But
it does have that same sort of medicinal vibe to it.
It's got this real, bacony, medicinal, it's tea tree oil, essentially, the thing coming through. So Manuka wood, there's one element. Codrona, which I think is really now kind of hitting its straps, is in Otago. And some of the world's greatest Pinot Noir is made half an hour down the road. So obviously you're going to be linking with the wine industry. And the same goes with Waiheke, which would be, the other one I'm particularly excited about, with the geodesic stills and all of that. And it's another weird kind of obsession with me at the moment as well. But, their winemaker. So Sarah, who's a winemaker, a whiskey maker, head distiller at Codrona, and Pat, who's the whiskey maker, head distiller at Waiheke, are both winemakers. Pat is still a winemaker. So that understanding of wine wood, quality of wine wood, or perhaps not fully emptying the cask. Maybe if you've got lees in your cask, maybe just leave the lees in. It's not against the law there. Add texture, So that is another way in which it's beginning to manifest itself. And I think it's always good. I think 10 years down the line you begin to understand what your distillery produces. Really.
Why do you think that Scotch whiskey or single malt blueprint is traveling so well? If you're a wine producing country like New Zealand, brandy would seem to be a kind of obvious move. I guess there's not the commercial opportunity there. But do you think that's what it is with single malt as well, or do you think there's something special about that spirit beyond the commercial opportunity that really makes new world producers want to pick it up?
It's a great question. I think the thing that sets single malt apart, and the thing that gets people excited about it, is that knowledge, that element of provenance. You know, if it says this distillery on the label, you know it's coming from this one particular spot on earth. You know, and that's a really powerful thing, and that chimes a lot with, again, can go into food. You know, we want to know where our food is coming from. Well, we kind of want to know where our whiskey is coming from as well. And this idea that you're buying into this place on the planet, I think it's a really, really powerful thing. And I think that's the trigger for so many people about single malt, that, you know, that's why it's special.
The term single seems to cause a lot of confusion with people who maybe not are so well acquainted with the whiskey industry. Like, I mean, I hear people think it means single barrel. But however, it was a really clever move because of exactly what you've just explained. It describes a single distillery doing a single thing at a single time. And that carries a huge amount of sort of kudos with it, it seems, for people who want something of great provenance.
Yes, yeah, I think it has premium built into it. You know,
writing.
What?
Okay. What are you? How many? I tried to work out how many books you've written, but it's actually a bit confusing. Do you know how many you're on?
I think I'm now on number 15. But there's been 2 editions of the Gin Book and 3 editions of the Atlas. So
you're counting that as? I think you should. They're like rewrites, basically, right?
Then I'm on 15.
Right, 15. Okay, yeah.
But I've been doing it a long time.
You have been doing it a long time. What are you currently working on?
I am currently working on the 4th in the manual series.
Okay.
And it's looking at American whiskey.
Cool.
So bourbon, rye, single malt, corn, and other weird stuff over there. So,
and there's plenty of distilleries to choose from there as well.
There's quite a lot. There's quite a lot. But, you know, it is capped as ever at just over 100, probably 102. Again, just to annoy people.
What's your selection criteria then? I guess diversity and...
Yeah, diversity, availability. You know, the whole thing about the manual series really is it's there for consumers to give them a guide to how to enjoy the spirit. So it has to be, you know, it'd be lovely to have things, you know, weird things like small, single casks and all of that. But, you know, by the time the book comes out, that's not going to be available. So the big brands have to be in there. And then I think absolute key players in the whiskies, which are kind of taking categories forward.
Yeah.
So yeah. And also, you know, you have to be aware it's going around the world. So,
sure.
You know, what is widely available or more widely available.
And you're doing the thing where you're testing all the mixers with...
Tasting all the mixers.
So what are the mixers that you're mixing with American?
Yeah, that's good. What are we doing? We're doing cola, obviously, ginger ale, lemonade, and peach iced tea.
Ah.
And then old-fashioned and a sour.
Oh, cool. Okay, nice. Right, and then so for anyone who's not familiar with the manual series, you basically sort of score these as to how well they mix together.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and yeah, but it's a ridiculous process.
In America, I mean, I've never had.
How do I do it?
I've never had a whiskey and peach iced tea before. Yeah, but in America, this is popular, I assume.
In America, it's a thing. You know, I had a bunch of friends. Ryan, our dear friend Ryan Chetty, was over in the States, and I was going, "Can you find out what the best mixers are?" And, you know, he was coming back with the most ridiculous things that were only available in like one shop in Kentucky, kind of thing. It was utterly useless, you know. But no, peach iced tea came through quite strongly. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I've had green tea in the whiskey, you know, the first whiskey manual. So I don't see why peach iced tea shouldn't work.
No, that's right. Yeah.
And it is fun. It takes a ridiculously long amount of time.
How far through it are you?
I'm on research at the moment. So, you know, because part of the manual is essentially trying to give you as much information in as few pages as possible. Yes. So I'm working on history at the moment, because I think there's areas of American whiskey history that haven't really been given, haven't really had the light shone on them. You know, the victors have written the history.
Yes.
You know, so the history of American whiskey tends to be Kentucky
focused.
and a wee bit of Tennessee, whereas in fact it's a lot richer and a lot stranger.
Yeah, Pennsylvania, Illinois as well.
Ohio. You know, the way whiskey was used to, you know, as a weapon against Native Americans. You know, that really hasn't been written about. It's been written about in academic, circles, but not really in kind of whiskey books. You know, the black influence on American whiskey as well, you know, really until recently really ignored. So there's all these kind of areas that I want to kind of dive into. You know, the fact that, you know, is it, they began using corn. You know, how did they know what to do with the corn? How did they get the corn? The Cherokee told them. The Cherokee were breeding corn for thousands of years before anyone arrived there. You know, so yeah, there's all these areas that I think are worthy of bringing to people's attention.
Yeah.
The story becomes rich.
Talking about the corn thing, I remember when I was doing my American whiskey book, and I actually retold this story recently because I was doing a bit of work with Michter's. You come across is it the Berkeley colony near Jamestown in Virginia, which I mean, there's not enough proof of this to be guaranteed, but it might be the first example of distillation in North America, and it was a corn spirit because they got corn from the Native Americans. They certainly brewed it into beer, and I think this is like early 1600s.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah.
And then there's also, because there ended up being an uprising from the Powhatans. They basically made friends with them and traded with them, but it was all a ruse by the chief of the Powhatans, who was Pocahontas' father, sorry. And they embedded themselves in the colony, and then one day just wandered in with weapons and massacred everyone. And that was the end of it. 300 people died. But there were, in the ruins of it, much later, there were remnants of what they thought was a copper pot still. And so it follows that the English were growing corn there. The Powhatans had traded it with them. They were definitely brewing beer because he wrote about this beer that he'd been consuming. I forget the name of the guy. And then maybe they distilled it into the first unaged, new make, white dog American whiskey, which is wild.
It is wild, you know, and it is wild. You know, I've been doing, essentially that's what the book's about. But yeah, I'm doing quite a bit. One of the other things I'm working on at the moment is a thing called the Liquid Antiquarian.
Yes.
Which Arthur Motley and I do. And the last one we did was on Dunder. Dunder and sour mashing, you know, and also kind of righting a wrong that, again, you know, through American whiskey, you go, you know, sour mashing, it's an American invention, you know, and, you know, James Crowe, you know, and he wasn't the first. He was, you know, refining it. He wasn't the first.
Crowe was like the sort of methodical, scientific approach guy, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. But where did they learn it from?
Yes,
well, they learned it from the East Coast distillers, rum distillers, who had learned it from the Caribbean. Because if you go back, you know, the early 1700s, late 17th century even, there's accounts about using Dunder to make, you know, this is how you make a good quality spirit. You know, the fact that rum is ignored as a quality spirit with incredible heritage and history is something that I really, you know, I'd really want to address that fact or redress. You know.
Did you tell me you're going to do another version of the rum book?
Yeah. That's kind of off the back of the manual. Yeah, I'm doing a rum book off the back of that. Which again, I don't know. I think it's because I'm old.
So is it a manual version of the rum book?
No.
It's a redoing of your rum book.
No, it's kind of a completely new one. But again, it's looking at history. So it's I mean, I've got an idea. I'm not going to say too much at the moment.
That's fine.
But yeah, I think there's an awful lot of stories in rum and a lot of misconceptions about rum that haven't necessarily been written about. So yeah, I'm really excited about that.
Yeah,
but it is, you know, as you get older, you know, all of a sudden history becomes increasingly interesting.
I think it's the malleability of history, which seems like it's so set in stone.
Yeah.
At least to me, as you're growing up and you learn these things, because it's written down, you're like, well, that's the fact.
That must be it.
You know.
Then you go to the primary sources and you find because Arthur, this sort of laid an investigation into, you know, when did Scotch whisky become identifiably the spirit that we know now? And the authorised version of it is 1823. The 1823 Act. That's when Scotch whisky industry was born. I've written that. And then you look back, you look at the parliamentary reports, you find primary sources. No, it's not. It's the middle of the 1700s where you begin to see, proper distillation, being applied, maturation, conscious maturation beginning. So it's you got to delve in Fossick and get yourself covered in spiders.
Did you? I had Jared and Anastasia on not so long ago, and obviously their new gin book aimed to rewrite all of that, and it's been peer reviewed and it's full of citations and everything. And I mean, it's quite remarkable, really. That all these sort of so-called gin acts that never once list gin as the culprit. It's just alcoholism in general, and all this sort of history that they've unearthed around German and Austrian housewives, who are really the it seems to be the originators of what later became English gin. And this whole Dutch trajectory seems like actually it was a dead end, really, and that English gin is more influenced by this sort of Central European.
It's extraordinary.
It's just amazing.
Yeah. And it's great. And so I would say so brave of them, and huge praise to them, because they've written history books before, and that they've kind of gone down that the version of gin that
the established.
You and I have also done books, and that's established fact. We know about this. But if you do then begin to delve, then you can actually what, I wasn't wrong, but new evidence has come up, and I think it's brave to be able to put your hand up and go, what,
for sure.
I got that wrong.
What does people would be interested to know what your writing process looks like? So when you're taking on a new project, how long does it take? What does it look like? When are you doing your research? When are you traveling? How much travel does it take? How much do you write in a day?
It kind of depends on the book, to be perfectly honest. So Way of Whisky and Sense of Place, there was a fair amount of research, not necessarily with whiskey, but all the stuff that surrounded it. So I did kind of deep dive into Japanese culture and aesthetics and all of that. So I had that, and Sense of Place. There was because Sense of Place was also kind of history of Scotland and whiskey within Scotland, and I think you find a lot of references to whiskey not in whiskey books and parliamentary reports, which are really, interesting if you're a geek, but in poetry and literature. I just at one point when I was sending in kind of early drafts of chapters, and my editor kind of went, "Dave, there's a bit too much Gaelic poetry in here." I was getting really excited about it. You could chart whiskey just through the realms of Gaelic poetry, which I still believe. But nobody's going to buy that book.
The whole book's in rhyme.
Yeah, the whole book, and Gaelic as well.
And Gaelic,
So I mean, I suppose the process is that I just do a load of research. I do lots and lots of research to begin with,
and just notes,
and notes, and buy lots of books, and stick bits of paper in them and underline stuff and marginalia and all of that, and then then get a structure at that point, and seeing how the story, and then think about the narrative, because Sense of Place and Way of Whisky are narrative books, they're road trips, so. Where do you put this fact? What's the narrative arc of that book? So that's the way I did those. The Atlas is is a really different one in that respect, because the Atlas was a map. Yeah, it's a map because distilleries exist in a certain place. Yeah. It's a map of flavour. Yeah. So that involves a lot of process and understanding production and tasting, but also a map of mindsets. This kind of rewrite that I did was really finding commonalities between distillers who probably never talk to each other, but actually the way that they're thinking about whiskey in Australia might be similar to the way they're thinking about whiskey in Mexico, for example. So finding those kind of links was quite an interesting thing. But the writing of the Atlas is a very different beast to the writing of Sense of Place, because, you have so many pages to do Scotland, so many pages to do Germany, and, you have a certain number of distilleries. And so sort of rambling a bit, but, I think the process of the Atlas, a lot of time was spent on who is in, and therefore also who's out. Because I couldn't write about 2,000 distilleries in the States or 150 in France. Otherwise, it would just be a directory. So, the research kind of went in that direction, but with that one. So.
It's quite a position of power in a way, isn't it, with the Atlas? It's such a, wide and respected, and I'd imagine sold quite a lot of copies around the world. So to be in that is a hell of a thumbs up for especially a newer distillery.
Yeah, and I was, I traveled a lot. I mean, it was 10 years since the last edition, so I'd traveled quite a lot around the world in that decade. So I knew of some of what was happening, only some of what was happening. But I did, I got in touch with friends, in Australia or the States or North, whatever, and go, okay, right, I've got an idea of the interesting ones, but you're on the ground, who would you recommend? And they would come back with their recommendations, and I would then have a look and go, yeah, okay, right, that's a good one. Oh, I'd never heard of them. Ooh, off we go. So, a lot of recommendations went into, he said, spreading the blame. but then, inevitably, there's ones which just suddenly pop up, and you go, why did I not hear about you?
I know that feeling.
Why?
So, I think, given how we've talked about how the sense of place is important, not the book's important, but the sense of place is important.
Yeah.
How important do you think it is for, if you're doing like the World Atlas of Whisky, that you go to the place and visit the distillery and meet the people to be able to write about it?
It was great to be able to do as much as I could, but impossible to do everybody. That's just the nature of the beast,
Yeah. What can you do? Yeah.
You can't.
Yeah. So talking about the road trip sort of format, I mean, the last two, I don't think I started doing this because I kind of thought you were doing it, but it just felt like more of a fun evolution of writing a book to actually tell a narrative rather than just a sort of encyclopedia, if you like.
It's much more interesting.
Yeah, because you get to bring the culture in a lot more, I think,
Yeah.
And the landscape and the music and the art and the restaurants and the food and the people and all that sort of stuff. But God, it's a challenge because, I mean, I think you're the master of this. You can write for novices and experts, and you're a bit like Pixar in that sense. You watch a Pixar movie and it appeals to like older adults, but also 3-year-olds. And so there's these layers to it and that's the genius of Pixar.
Responsible drinking at 3.
Maybe we don't go below 18 for this.
Good analogy.
No, the analogy is to novices and experts.
Yeah.
And that's why I think your writing is really, really good. But of course, if you're doing that for a road trip, you have to, that's, for example, the Tequila and Mezcal book I've just done. There's about 50 distilleries.
Yeah, which is a great book.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Great book. And a book that's so needed. There was this huge gap that was needed.
Yeah. So thank you very much.
Yeah, no, great book.
That means a lot. But of course, the first distillery you visit, you have to describe what is unique. This is at least the sort of pressure I put on myself. Describe what is unique about it, but also lay out the sort of foundations of what a tequila is. And then the next distillery, I find myself like, right, now I need to give a little bit more.
Yeah.
But not so much that I haven't held enough back for distillery number 50, where there's still something fresh and new and interesting to add. And then because it's a road trip, it has to sort of work geographically as well. You can't be just like jump all over the place. Because people are like, well, that's a weird road trip. I found it, and I kind of did it to some extent with the whiskey road trip book as well, but I found it really challenging, but also extremely rewarding to be able to sort of tell this narrative story and bring people along with it. And also, it demands that people read the book from the start to the finish, rather than like, I'm going to pick my favorite distillery and read that.
Yeah.
And I think that's that's a nice way to go about writing. Is give someone complete work. It's like listening to a whole album rather than just one song.
Exactly. You know, and turning the disc over halfway through.
Exactly. Yes.
No, yeah, it involves a lot of planning. Yeah, and what do you drop in? You know, what do you know? In some ways, you have to leave people hanging to some extent. With the Japanese, I think Japanese was perhaps the interesting one, because being able to place different elements of whiskey within the road trip, that's a really tricky thing to do. You know, because I think our inclination as whiskey lovers is that if somebody then goes, "Oh, I'm interested in whiskey," you want to tell them everything. You know, and they're there and their eyes glaze over after like 5 minutes, and you know, you've only just talked about barley. you know, you just go, "Whoa, this great splurge of information that you kind of dump on folk." So that's why I find it useful for me to have that kind of plan, that have that arc, and go, right, okay, right, at this point, I think, right, I remember it's when I was at Hakushu with Mike Miyamoto, and we were having dinner and drinking around a campfire, you know, late at night, and it was Mike that said, of course, in Japan we call it whiskey do, Way of Whisky, and I go, okay, great, ding, here we go, and we'd spent a lot of time that day at Hakushu talking about lactobacillus, which, you know, super geeky. And that's fine. It's okay, right. Now I'm going to use that as a title. That's great. For I didn't have a title at that point. That's great. So that's
Lactobacillus.
Yeah, lactobacillus. That's going to sit right at the heart of the book. You know, that's going to be the pivot point.
Yeah.
So it's building up to this point. Boom, and then we're off. You know, defining what a sense of place is. Eventually, then boom. There's going to be a central point. You know, where all of these strands kind of cohere, and then you know, we explode. And then, therefore, it's a matter, and then we've been talking about lactobacillus, for example, all the way through in all the other distilleries that I've been to. I think, well, actually, no, I'm not going to mention it. I'm going to talk about long fermentation. But only when I get to Hakushu are we going to have a deep dive into it. Otherwise, it becomes repetitive.
Yes.
Everybody's going to be saying pretty much the same thing. So you find out what is special about that particular distillery. It's not that they're not doing any of the other stuff, but, you know, what makes you special? It's that, therefore, right, boom. Yeah. That's the focal point.
Yeah, and you can allude to that thing at other places without necessarily drilling down into it. And then
you can flip back and you refer back.
Sure. Yeah. Remember, we saw this, Yeah. Yeah, very nice. Just moving on from books, maybe we should talk a little bit about journalism. What's your current sort of...
I didn't know what you were going to say. Moving on from books.
I mean, because you're writing a lot on a blog these days, right?
Yeah. I'm going to kind of migrate that to Substack.
How are you? Okay.
Because of the next question you're going to ask me, which is I anticipate journalism.
Yeah.
You know.
So I mean, what's the state of drinks journalism at the moment?
Bad.
I think.
Bad, really bad.
Yeah.
You know, the outlets are shrinking. The length of the pieces are shrinking. The nature of communication is changing. The rates essentially haven't changed for about 15 years.
Which means they're if not less than what they used to be.
You cannot make money out of writing alone, especially, you know, drinks journalism. And it's worrying. It's really worrying. You know, a lot of people are now, you know, doing podcasts, and, you know, et cetera, but which is great, you know, because people want to know, and you know,
remains to be seen if you can make out money of this. We'll see.
Yeah, but you know, the world has changed, you know, and you have to adapt to that world. But yeah, I find it deeply concerning, really, that there is so much out there, and there's so many stories out there, and at a time when I'd say, especially at the moment where the whole of the spirits industry is going through pretty tough times. You know, the whole, every category is, you know, if not in decline, then, you know, there's a slump, there's a softening, there's a slowing. You call it what you want. This is the time where it's vital to educate. This is the time it's vital to actually get information out there, because I don't think people are rejecting spirits. It's just the stories haven't changed, and you need outlets for those stories. So it's so important to have good journalism, and I would argue good long form journalism as well as, you know, TikTok.
Yeah, it seems that there's been a massive shift in just attention though, right? Everyone's distracted, everyone wants shorter nuggets.
Yeah.
I mean, Twitter, I guess, was kind of the beginnings of this, 128 characters, but now it's Reels, or it's, TikTok swiping, or it's X, and it seems like it's sort of culturally shifted our ability to pay attention for longer than 10 seconds. And of course, long form journalism requires, 10, 20 minutes of your time.
Yeah.
Most people, I mean, me included, I struggle to read a book these days, I'll sit down and something will distract me, and it's not necessarily my phone, it's just I'm so easily distracted. And I think this is a problem with a lot of people. I don't think it's just me. It seems like we're not able to kind of find that peace of sitting down and paying attention to something for 10, 20 minutes or 10 hours, if it's a book.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's what is happening to our brains, but my argument would be that if that is the case, and I wouldn't disagree with you at all, actually, if that is the case, then we still have to find new ways of getting that information across, because, if I can pick up a bottle here.
That's probably an opportune moment to open a bottle, actually.
That isn't communicating anything, but so much of what you see about, and so many brands are quite happy with the information of their whiskey that has taken 10 years to age. If they have a photo out there of somebody smiling, holding the bottle, then that's all they need. I mean, good God, that's no way to build a brand. And long term, that is dangerous.
It seems sort of somewhat, there's a massive tension there, isn't there, between on, let's say, the website or the back of your bottle listing all of the wonderful things you've done in order to make this product, and then the marketing consists of a couple of influencers holding it, exactly. And all of that is then gutted, know?
And then nobody believes the influencers anyway, because they go, oh, that's an influencer. Yeah, they're getting paid to do that. Yeah, I'm not going to buy that. So yeah, I mean, it's a real challenge at the moment.
And what's your prognosis for books then? Do you think that might start to go the same way? If indeed we are losing the ability to read a 10-minute article, then surely a 5-10 hour, or indeed, I'd imagine it takes about 30 hours to get through the World Atlas of Whisky.
The joy of the Atlas is that you can actually pick up and read it for 10 minutes.
Sure.
And that's fine.
Yeah.
I still hold out hope for books. I think, and it's interesting doing kind of readings and tastings, to help kind of promote said titles. The number of people who do come out and who are happy to buy the book and happy to taste the whiskey and stuff, and you go to great independent bookstores around the UK, and they're busy, and they've got great events, programs going on. The shelves are stuffed, and they're making money. So I think there is still an inherent, love of book and the printed word.
It's a bit like vinyl, I guess, in that sense, isn't it? Like, we listen to, you might listen to Spotify or Apple Music, but nevertheless, it's wonderful to own the vinyl and to play that and to turn it over and to handle it and to feel it.
Have the physical thing in front of it. And certainly, and I know I keep kind of banging on about these two books, but it was so heartening for me to work with photographers and with Koei Take for Japan and Christina Gernen for Sense of Place, because we were the team. The photos weren't just there as eye candy. The photos were there to drive the narrative forward. Yeah. So we would be working together about, oh, that's a good shot, and they would hear something. Say, oh yes, right, okay, we're going to go down this route.
It sounds like Addy, who I work with a lot, it's kind of the same.
Yeah, exactly.
A good partnership with a photographer. Yeah. Because, like you say, when you're doing sort of this narrative non-fiction, you need, the whole thing needs to be cohesive, doesn't it? And for the reader, they need to be seeing the same thing that they're imagining through the words, and vice versa.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. I know when it works, it's an absolute.
It's magic.
It's an absolute joy, and people get it. People then pick up those books because they love Scotland, or because they love Japan, or because they love Mexico, and they go, oh, actually, I don't know anything about whiskey or tequila or whatever, but actually I like this, because this is telling me something more about this other thing that I'm interested in. So that element of removing boundaries. I love connections. Everything is connected, and I love trying to find ways to connect.
Yeah, and you've done that a lot with connecting sort of music and art and tradition. Do you want to speak a little bit more about that, maybe about sort of how these different art forms or crafts influence one another and interplay with one another?
They're all part of a cultural milieu. Did I really say cultural milieu? Cultural milieu. Did I really say that? Yeah, no, but they are. They're all cultural responses to where you are. I mean, especially music, especially traditional music. That was another, when we did Amber Light, and and when we film, and now we're.
George, just explain what Amber Light is for anyone that's not.
Amber Light was a film that made with Adam Park. 6 years ago now. Still on Netflix and Disney Plus.
There you go.
Apparently, it's lots of sweary words. I don't remember them. There's a warning in
how Disney has changed.
There's a warning in Disney. It's foul language and alcohol abuse.
They probably couldn't understand the Glaswegian. Sounds like he's swearing.
Netflix calls it cozy. And that, in some ways, it's like parallel to Sense of Place. It was looking at Scotland through the lens of whiskey, and talking to traditional musicians, predominantly traditional musicians, and the way that they were talking about that continuum within folk music is so similar to talking about the continuum within any craft, but the continuum within whiskey. And the same that we're doing a film in Ireland, but essentially looking at Renaissance in Ireland. The rediscovery of Irish culture, of traditional Irish culture, which manifests itself in writing, in music, in art, in food. And also in whiskey.
When is that? Is that in post-production now? Have you filmed that already?
Got one last shoot to do, so it'll be out, fingers crossed.
Is that called the Green Light?
No, it's called the Amber Isle.
Amber Isle.
Yeah.
Amber Isle.
Yeah, Adam's obsessed with
Amber. Yeah.
But that's really interesting. So in answer to the question, yeah, I mean, they all impact. They're all responses to where you are. Personal responses to where you are, or you're following a tradition. Yeah. And again, it's food. Yeah. Recipes getting passed down. You're using what grows around you. It's as soon as you begin to look at it, step back from this thing called whiskey, and then just go, okay, it's a drink. Oh, right, and it's an agricultural product. And what else is an agricultural product? Well, food. Well, actually. Why do we eat haggis? Why do you drink iron brew?
Caffeine and sugar.
It's all in the same level. Yeah, it's not like, well, here is whiskey, here is food. It's like, no, the part and parcel is exactly the same response.
Yeah. No, I mean, and we touched on this to begin with a bit, and with a risk of sort of retreading trodden ground. I think it's the thing that inspires me most about spirits and alcohol is how they're so representative of culture in all its forms. And as we said before, it might be legislation, it could be politics, it could be agriculture, obviously the local flora, whatever grows there, taste sensibilities, technology that's available at any given time, outside influences from other nations, countries, import, export as time goes on. And all of these things come together to shape what that product in the glass actually tastes and smells like.
Absolutely.
And the same way it does with music, and it does with food, and it does with art. And so there's such strong parallels between all of them, and it's a beautiful thing. When you appreciate all of that together, it's a beautiful thing.
And it's daft not to talk about it. Because it is enriching. Yeah, it is a way into a deeper understanding of where you come from, or your that culture which has produced that.
Yeah,
it's good for the soul.
Indeed. Right. I know what else is good for the soul. That's not something to drink.
Perfect. Segue.
What do you want to?
You've done this before.
Yeah. You brought a couple of things to try.
Yeah.
We pulled a couple of things out of the cabinet, and then I've got a special thing which we'll try at some point as well.
Nice.
What are you thinking? I'll save that till last, probably.
Yeah, definitely. and we've got a rye here, which I think is which I haven't tried, but it could well be quite pokey.
Yeah, maybe maybe one of your first two that you brought.
Yes, So I was heading out. I can't actually reach. I was heading out the house. Oh God, Tris asked me to bring something, and
there'll be a shock to people that you leave the house without bringing something on.
There's usually something in the bag. But this was a sample which I was sent for the Atlas, which comes from the Bowes Distillery, BOWS Distillery, which is in the kind of Montagne Noire, fairly close to Carcassonne in the southwest of France. And it's made from sorghum. It's a wild Occitan spirit. And just really experimenting with different grains. He's playing around with koji as well, which probably isn't allowed in terms of being able to call it whiskey, but why the hell not? And sorghum, and again, why not? And the only other sorghum whiskey I know of is one in South Africa, Helden Distillery, just to the north of Joburg as well. But sorghum kind of makes sense.
This really is rare then, a sorghum whiskey. I mean, so how would you characterize? I mean, we're going to taste it and we can make our own assessments. But how would you characterize sorghum in the sort of flavor map of other cereals? Where would you put it? Is it close to corn or?
No, it's closer to barley. It's more kind of nutty.
Nutty. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Slange. Pour salut.
Indeed. I don't know what it is in Occitan. Oh yeah. It's bright. It's quite sweet.
Yeah.
Lovely fruit coming through. It's quite young. It's a relatively new distillery, but you get that kind of slight kind of nutty thing coming through. I think it's delicious.
It's really good.
Really, it's
and especially, I mean, young whiskey, but very well resolved actually. Because you get that sweetness from the cereal. I guess it's coming from the cereal coming through. It's really lovely. Yeah.
No, I think a delicious one. And what's happening in France is just really, really exciting.
Yeah, you were saying there's about 100 distilleries there.
Yeah, there's over 100 distilleries in France doing it now, and you're beginning to see kind of regional-ish styles developing. Brittany, I brought a Breton one as well. Brittany is quite Celtic, it's quite Scotch in a way, apart from Edu, which uses buckwheat, but they're using local oak. So that's kind of taking it off in a different direction. Yeah. You got huge number of cognac distillers now making, and the way they're approaching whiskey in a very similar way to the way that they make cognac, and also using cognac stills, which I would argue, and I think you agree, does give a different stylistic character. Alsace, traditionally Alsace has kind of come from a wine background, but also an eau de vie background. Where they're using barley as they want to kind of get the maximum out of the barley.
The flavor
so it's a very different style. And down in the southwest, they're just kind of, doing crazy shit.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? Just one other European country, and you've already got this sort of regionality to it.
Yeah,
and then all these interesting influences that are quintessentially of that region. Like you say, the eau de vie distillers in Alsace. I always think it's fascinating when eau de vie distillers turn themselves to. What would you say, like more traditional spirits? And obviously eau de vies are traditional to them, but things like whiskey, or even rum, because they use their knowledge of how to treat the raw material, and they're the masters of that.
Exactly.
I mean, the way that they can capture a plum or an apricot or a pear or whatever in the bottle, and you're like, it just tastes like a fucking plum. Like, how did you do that? It's incredible. So when you get that same kind of treatment with a more familiar cereal or whiskey or whatever, it's incredible. I mean, even like the guys at St. George in America always impressed me with the whiskies and stuff they're making. And of course, they started out as an eau de vie distillery.
And they've been making single malt for 25 years, which kind of everybody forgets because they were out there on their own for so long.
It's really honeyed now, that.
Yeah, it's really gorgeous. Yeah. I don't know why I'm saying surprised, but it's been a while since I'd...
Such a strong honeyed now.
So tried it,
Going back to it. What's your...
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, really honeyed.
Wild. Yeah.
Do you have any sort of like methodology or rituals around when you taste and assess whiskey that
Yeah, I would normally pour the glasses at about 10 o'clock. And I would start tasting about half an hour later. And these days, and I don't know whether it's just age or whatever, but it takes me an hour and a half, a couple of hours maybe, to do 3 or 4 glasses.
What's going on in that like 2 or 3 hours then?
Yeah, well, I'm nosing. I'm nosing neat. I'm tasting neat. I'm doing. I've kind of got a different way of tasting. Well, for me anyway, a different way of tasting. I taste, and I'll clean my mouth out, and then I'll take a little sip and I'll kind of hold it and tip on my tongue. So I'll kind of break it down. So what's happening in the front of the tongue, then spit it out, then what's happening in the middle of the tongue, and then what's happening in the back of the tongue. And it gives you an idea of the shape of the whiskey and actually where different flavours begin to emerge. And then I'll taste it again. And then I'll reduce, or then I'll go away because I'm knackered. And then go back and do it again. So yeah, it just takes a long time, but I think you have to treat them with respect. But the days of, I remember Whiskey Magazine, and all of a sudden the samples would come out and you'd be doing like 20 or something in the session, and then you look back at the notes and you kind of go, I honestly, I missed that, or I was clearly drunk by that point, because everything suddenly tastes amazing. And
could do with a beer to go alongside.
And it's kind of you kind of got to stop yourself. I'm just being too enthusiastic, and it's not because I'm Scottish. I'm just being a bit too enthusiastic here. So actually, the alcohol's getting to me. So no, I'm stepping away. So I'll do. Yeah.
So you've got a real upper limit of how many you can taste in a day then?
Yeah, I mean, and for the manual, it'll be half a dozen, but I wouldn't go above that. Yeah, I wouldn't go above that because I know my palate will just get confused. And I'd rather write a small number of good tasting notes than, incoherent gibberish.
What's a good tasting note? Can it be too long? Can it be too short?
Yes. The answer.
Can it be just right?
Yeah, it could be just right. Yeah, it's like Goldilocks. A good tasting note could be 3 words. I think if you can boil it down to 3 words, if you can boil it down to one flavour, if you can boil it down to 3 words, that is great.
It's very good for the reader because there's a sort of simplicity, there's a beauty in the economy of it, right? Not too wordy.
And it locks away, because then that's all you're going to remember.
Yeah, that's true.
To be perfectly honest, that's all people are going to remember. But at the same time, I like a tasting note. I don't like writing tasting notes, to be honest. Maybe that's why I don't taste so much in one session. Because I think the tyranny of the tasting note, of right colour, now the nose, now the palate, now, it's just really boring. I'm really interested in shape. What shape the whiskey makes in the mouth, what the texture is.
As in sort of roundness versus sharpness and how you...
but the physicality of the whiskey in the mouth. Someone like wedge shaped, they come in quite, tight to begin with, and they kind of go like that. Some are reversed, they're big and just kind of tail off, and some are like a ball in the middle, some like dissipate around the side. So the physicality of a whiskey is important. And I first realised this when I was doing a lot of work in Asia, Japan and also in China, and you can't translate tasting notes. Even if you get away from the kind of right, okay, everybody, this smells like clouty dumpling. That's not going to translate. But even the simplest words, because the cultural sensibility will be different. The reference points are going to be different. So when I'm doing that, I kind of skip over. I go through the nose quite quickly, but everybody's palate works pretty much the same way. So you can kind of go, right, take a taste.
In terms of texture and shape.
Yeah, this is going to happen now. And about halfway through, boom. And everybody's got, and you've got everybody at that point.
And you haven't had to use descriptive language as such, not specific flavour notes and everything, so it's more about sensation.
Exactly. So the way that I would like to write tasting notes these days, if it not hugely condensed into mini haiku, is almost like essays, and the flavors come through, and the shape comes through, and
the entire experience.
Where does it put me through? This is what I'm feeling. When this goes through.
So we're either talking about either a full page on a tasting note or a haiku.
Yeah,
or 3 words, even better.
Or the most absurd ones recently have been the Macbeth series that I've worked on with Lexi and Ollie and Sikander, because Lexi had this idea of releasing a whiskey for every character in the play Macbeth.
This rings a bell now.
So it's 43 characters.
Okay.
And Quentin Blake has done the
That's
illustrations.
right. Yeah,
He's done the illustrations for every single character.
Yes.
And my job has been to work out what each character would taste like if it was a whiskey, and then give that character profile to Ollie, who then has to go and find a whiskey that then fits that. So it's not going, we need a Ben Nevis. It's kind of, we need this character. And then the tasting note essentially is then a combination of who the character is and also what the flavors are, which is just another layer of absurdity. But it's great fun. It's really, really good.
I like it.
Really good fun.
You're sort of, I don't know. It's describing whiskey using a separate language and I mean, not everyone knows every character in Macbeth, obviously.
Yeah.
But you can.
I do.
Yes, you do. You know them intimately, of course.
God, I do. Especially the ones who say nothing.
Yeah.
That's not easy.
Yeah. But you could imagine it being applied to music, right? You could say, well, let's take, just for example, let's take the top 20 selling songs of the last decade, and you could think about the character of those songs. Perhaps you could go across different genres as well to make it a bit more interesting and varied, because otherwise it's going to be awful pop music. And then you can match the character of that music to a different whiskey. And that's a language that you don't need to know anything about whiskey whatsoever. And if I say, well, I don't know, Taylor Swift, this whatever song she sings, showing my musical knowledge here.
It was a really bad. A singer of which neither of us know it.
Yeah, exactly. Bad idea. Yeah. You get my point.
I get
and you're like, I know the rhythm of that song, I know the tempo of it, I know how high or how low it goes, etc. That's a fun way of communicating whiskey to anyone.
Yes, fun. We have to remember it's fun.
Yeah.
We can get so bogged down and make it all dreadfully, dreadfully serious. It's not. It's there as a social lubricant. It's there to put a smile on your face. So the way it's communicated can be serious if you want, but at the same time, ultimately, it's about fun.
I think whiskey can borrow, or spirits in general can borrow from cocktail culture in a way, in that sense, because if you look at some of the great cocktail lists, especially more modern ones, they're very playful, very fun, very stylized or themed. The ingredients are often serious and the methodology serious, but actually you can have fun with the naming and the way you communicate it and the way you design menus around cocktails. I think that's maybe a nice way to start for bars and possibly brands and even writers to start communicating whiskey in a more interesting light.
Of course, good. Yeah, it's good. That's good.
That's tasty. That honey thing is
really tasty.
Is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
All right, let's try something else quickly while we've got a quick pause, and then maybe I'll tell you what, I'll give you this one to try. So this is quite funny because I recently decided that I'm not going to. Okay. I'm going to stop guests who work for or own a brand from bringing their own products to taste, because it's sometimes in danger of becoming just a marketing exercise on the podcast, and that's not really what it's about. I want to bring on experts, and sometimes those experts are affiliated with a brand or own a brand, but I want to talk about their category, their spirit category, or the culture around it, and all that great stuff. So this is quite ironic because I have had something to do with making this, and this might be the last time that anyone showcases
ever asked you to do something like that.
So this.
Hey, tell me more.
I'm going to try and tell this story as quickly as possible. The Chase family, who own the Chase Distillery over in Herefordshire, or did own the Chase Distillery in Herefordshire, obviously made Chase vodka, Chase gin. Very successful brand. Also, Tyrrell's Crisps was formerly William Chase as well, as you know. They sold to Diageo a few years back, and through various interesting, complex things that have happened, they've now bought the distillery back again.
Right.
And with the distillery came over 500 casks of whiskey that have been made there since 2012. So the oldest stocks are 13 years old. The youngest are about 5 years old because the whiskey production stopped after Diageo acquired it, because Diageo don't have much interest, I don't think, in producing a very small amount of English whiskey. So anyway, the distillery's been acquired back by the family, and it's now this sort of process of converting it into a whiskey distillery.
Oh, amazing.
To start making more whiskey, but also releasing this year the first batch of whiskey from the casks that are already maturing.
Well, that's exciting.
And then each subsequent year, there's going to be more batches released. This is the first batch, and I blended it. So I've been brought on to blend the whiskey.
Yay!
I have got like a fairly long history with the Chase guys. I've actually been tasting this whiskey for about 7 or 8 years now. Right back when the whiskey was still fairly young, I was getting an opportunity to try it and see how it was developing. And they kindly asked me to come on board as the blender.
Amazing.
I'm not saying master blender because I'm by no means a master of this, but a lot of what we've talked about up to this point in the conversation feeds into it, because I've been kind of thinking about, right, what is an English whiskey? What is a whiskey from Herefordshire? What should it taste like? What are the, what should be the influences over this product? And this is a single malt whiskey, and obviously the whiskey's already been made. It's put in barrels, and I have a fairly limited stock of barrels to play with. And we wanted to release a 10-year-old whiskey as the first whiskey, which this is.
Wow.
So a small amount of casks, but still this opportunity to taste and to smell and to blend to a flavor profile that hopefully speaks of the place a little bit.
Yeah.
So
I'm very excited.
no one's tried this outside of the distillery.
Oh.
And in fact, this whole all of this is embargoed. The information I've just given you until the 17th of September.
Okay.
We're recording on the 28th of August.
Right.
So
you're saying nothing.
You're sworn to secrecy. But this episode is not going to go out until after then. So it was really fortuitous timing.
Well, thank you so much.
I had to speak to the distillery.
It's an honour.
And ask them if it was okay. At cask strength, this is about 62% ABV.
Okay.
I've cut it with a little bit of water, but it might need a little bit more.
Right.
But
we have water.
yeah, we have water. So try that.
Wonderful. And it's been aged in...
So this is a combination of ex-bourbon, and there's a couple of sherry casks. There's Oloroso and a PX.
And stills?
The stills is the same still that they were making gin on.
Okay.
So it's a Christian Carl. With the
Carl. Yeah. Nice, flexible still,
Yeah.
actually. Good call.
And I won't lead you with anything. I'll just let you taste and see what you think. But I reckon it's probably in the low to mid 50s at the moment, so it might need a bit of water.
Palate's delicious. Lovely roundness to it. Yeah, it might need just a tiny wee tickle of water.
Yeah.
Quite appley.
There you go. That's what we're going for.
Yeah.
I mean, apple orchards surrounding the distillery, and obviously Hereford famous for ciders. So orchard fruit was definitely something we wanted to try and hit. So you're saying all the right words. They're going to be most pleased.
Well, you've hit the brief. But it's got that almost kind of Calvados character coming through.
Yeah.
Kind of pear coming through in that.
Funnily enough, actually, one of the casks...
lovely feel.
Yeah, thank you. One of the casks I had to play with was an ex-apple brandy cask, because I think before they even made whiskey at Chase, they did a small run of cider spirit, apple brandy, and they put it in barrels. They promptly took it out of the barrels, and then some of the earliest whiskey went into that. So there are some actual Hereford apple brandy casks aged whiskies at the distillery.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so exciting. I was wondering what was happening up there. I knew that they had been playing with whiskey, making whiskey, but it was always just kind of very sotto voce. It's kind of, yeah, we're doing something. Yeah, we'll let you know, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm delighted.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's cool. So we're bottling at 47%. Yeah, put a bit of water in there. We're bottling at 47. So that was fun, trying it at different strengths. And obviously, you know, as a whiskey drinker, I'm used to adding water to whiskey and seeing what happens to the aroma and the taste. But when you're blending the bottle, it's so fascinating seeing how the difference between just a little splash of water, 50%, you know.
Extraordinary, isn't it?
Actually,
I mean, I do, because you always hear about blenders, you know, doing their blending at like 20%, which I just cannot do.
Yeah.
And you can understand you have to go 100 glasses and it's kind of losing. You understand why it happens, you know.
It does different things to the aroma when you water down that far, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like you get down to sort of like wine strength,
Yeah.
and the aroma changes completely. But then, I don't know. I've never quite gotten to understand exactly why they do that, because no one's. I mean, I guess a highball. You know, you're kind of drinking somewhere near that strength, so maybe that makes sense. But is it more easy to pick out defects? Is it more easy to notice certain top notes of the whiskey?
I think it. I mean, essentially what they're looking for is some sort of commonality. So,
Yeah.
I think it is.
Yeah.
You know, if it's off, then it will be magnified.
Yeah.
But it's a little kind of char thing going on. A nice kind of, in the nicest possibly kind of dusty element.
Anyway, I feel like I put you on the spot and you have to say nice things, but yeah. So
No,
it
really is delicious, and those fruits have just come through beautifully. It's lovely and bright on the finish as well. When you add that water and good length. Kind of get obsessed with length in whiskey.
Yeah.
No, that's great. It's great. Really good.
And a 10-year-old, which is really cool for English whiskey. I think only the English Whiskey Company have done a 10-year-old.
I think so.
Thus far.
Yeah.
There's a few of them very close, like Lakes and Cotswold must be pretty close, I think.
I think England's really interesting. I think there's great whiskies getting made, but it's I think it's tough being an English whiskey distiller because Scotland is so close.
Yeah.
You know, it's easier to be in Norway and kind of go, well, you know, we have our food culture, you know, we have this, we have that, blah, blah, blah.
It's not that different, is it? You know?
And then England, it's kind of, well, it's essentially the same.
Yeah. Square sausages,
so
we don't have down
But at the same time, I think it's, for those distillers who kind of grasp that, it's allowing them greater creativity. You know, if you look, you know, you look at what Wireworks are doing, you know, it's phenomenal whiskey, you know, great whiskey. You know, really thinking, when they're not thinking outside the box, just going, right, okay, we can do what we want, because actually the last thing we want to do is be like Scotch.
Yeah.
So that is a creative impulse. I think it's great. So yeah, I've got a lot of time for the great English whiskies.
Yeah, I mean, I
and
guess
the variety that's emerging. You know, Lakes is completely different.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah, they've done a lot of sort of pretty experimental releases with different casks and things, haven't they? Some quite wild stuff. I guess, like you say, because there's a danger of being like, oh, you're just sort of Scotland's sibling, younger sibling in respect of sort of established whiskey industry, it's going to be kind of similar. Is the sort of impetus, the spur that you need to go, right, well, we're going to do something different in that case, if that's what you think. We're going to have to sort of create some daylight between us and Scotland, or England and Scotland, you know.
This would make it great. It's great in its own way. I bow to you in terms of cocktails, right? I can imagine that as a base of some great mixed drinks.
Yeah.
No, I'm really impressed.
Thank
really
you.
Impressed.
Cool. Well, let's move on from that. Take me back to the earlier part of your career and where it all began.
Where it all began. How far back do you want to go? Okay, so quick précis. I studied English at uni. Always wanted to write. I left uni. There really are no jobs for English graduates, English language literature graduates. So I began working for Oddbins. Worked for Oddbins for 7 years. Did WSET up to diploma level. Ran a pub after that for a short period of time.
Where was that?
I was in Bristol.
Still there?
The pub's still there. The lease ran out, so the pub closed because we wanted a long lease and they wouldn't give us. It was owned by the hospital. Well, strange. There we go.
Well, it's good for hospital business, I suppose.
The customers were fascinating. It was great. It was really good fun. But at that point, I was writing. So I was writing about music. I was writing kind of weird jazz and all that stuff. So when it closed, I went, okay, well, that's it. I'm going to go down the music writing avenue. Then a job came up in off-license news, and I got that. So off-license news is a trade weekly, or was a trade weekly. I was features editor there for 7 years, which kind of meant I was writing 2,000, 3,000 pieces. Sometimes just like trade pieces, like, market analysis, but also educational stuff. But it could be Rioja one week and whiskey the next. And that's kind of where the whiskey thing started. This is early 90s. So single malt's just beginning to come up, and you're beginning to see single malt appearing in the shelves, but not a huge amount of writing about it, especially from a trade point of view.
Who was writing about it? What were you reading?
Michael Jackson was writing about it. Charlie McLean, who actually was one of my old customers in Oddbins in Edinburgh, was writing about it, and another guy called Murray, he was writing about it. But that was it. And Wallace Milroy, who got me incredibly drunk one day. That was my kind of introduction to whiskey. Love that man. But not a lot of people for a big subject. So when I left to go freelance, I did a vintage in Australia and came back, wanted to write about wine and spirits, essentially continuing what I had done. But it became fairly obvious that I think in my heart of hearts, I just wanted to write about spirits. I wanted to write about whiskey, and I wanted to, get all these stories out there, which had really essentially never been told. And there was a degree more flexibility because nobody was really doing it. You could go to editors with ridiculous ideas about spirits, which you couldn't do with wine, because wine was kind of, well, this is how you write about wine. I think it's changed now, but this is here's the format for wine writing. Spirits, well, we don't know anything about it. Well, can I do this? Can I can I smuggle a cask of whiskey from Speyside down to Balmoral? Yeah, okay, So that was my path. But in terms of influences, I was lucky enough to work really closely with Michael Jackson for a whole number of years, right up until his death. And Michael just taught me a huge amount about whiskey and also about writing. Whiskey, writing, tasting, yeah, he was always there. He was a great friend, great mentor. Miss him hugely. And I think it's a real shame that his influence is kind of, especially in the whiskey world, a lot of people haven't really heard of who Michael was. In the beer world, he's still revered.
Yeah.
He was the father of American craft brewing. But in whiskey, for some reason, his star has dimmed. And also Charlie, he's just been a dear friend for many years. And Charlie and I have sailed together and talked together and done classes together, and you learn from your betters and your elders. And
so just double click on Michael again for a second, and maybe let's spell out his influence, what he did for whiskey writing, his books, his style, his whole approach to it.
Yeah, but so Michael started off. I mean, he was a journalist. He worked in advertising trade title for a while, but was always really interested in beer. So he began writing about beer. So he was the beer hunter. He had a series in Channel 4 when Channel 4 started up called The Beer Hunter, with him kind of shambling around breweries in Belgium.
Sounds like a great job, doesn't it?
It was a great job. And because he was interested in beer, he went, well, actually, there's a natural kind of link into whiskey. So began to become interested in whiskey. And there really hadn't been anybody writing about whiskey from a kind of consumer angle for many years. David Daiches did some stuff, but Michael really of a new era, so this is from the 70s on, was really the first one to start popularizing whiskey and starting explaining whiskey. And I started explaining single malt, because you have to remember, single malt is essentially a new category. People really hadn't heard of this stuff. I always say the only people who really drank single malt were landed gentry and Scottish poets. the Scottish literary scene would always be in Edinburgh pubs drinking lots of single malt. Nobody else really knew what the hell it was until Michael came along. I really began to explain in very, very clear, and this is one of the great things I learned from clear prose. You could have flights of fancy, but really, if you're reading this, you have to understand. The reader has to understand this because it can be obscure and willfully obscure at times. So the clarity of his writing, I think, was important. And then he brought out the what's it called? The handbook, whiskey tasting book, which was the first of its kind. Wallace Milroy brought out one at round about the same time as well, which, the beautiful, beautiful book, essentially all single malts, broken down, tasting notes, a little bit about the distillery. That essentially was your reference guide. I never knew about this. What does Michael say about it? So yeah, influence was just immense, absolutely immense.
And it was necessary at the time, I guess. Like you say, the sort of emergence of malts and
exactly.
This sort of shift away from blends, and suddenly there's all these distilleries that need profiling and tasting and sense made of the whole thing.
Yeah, sense made of it, and the fact that they had been around for so many years, but really had never been seen because everything had gone into blends. Right, what is this? This world suddenly it is opened up, and it needed somebody out there being the guide, the pathfinder into this what was a complete new world. And Michael was that person, and Charlie then followed on. Without these two, would we know anything about single malt? Well, probably, but the way in which they wrote, the way in fact that Charlie still writes, just beautiful, beautiful prose.
Yeah.
So I think the quality of the writing also helped.
Do you think your prose is beautiful. Do you think your background in writing about music has really sort of steered your approach to writing about whiskey?
Yeah.
You have I would say a very I think there's clarity in your prose as well, but there's beauty and there's sort of artistry in the way in which you describe things.
Oh, nice of you.
And I think I don't know, that feels like it comes from an arts sort of appreciation of art.
Yeah, probably. I mean, I read a lot of poetry. I do read a lot of fiction, but I read a lot of poetry. So maybe it kind of that filters in. I don't deliberately kind of go, I have to make this poetic, but maybe that. Poetry is really good at kind of distilling language.
There you go.
So maybe it's coming from that. And also, I would say a trade background. I think if you want to be a drinks writer, do some trade writing as well, because you have to, that discipline of writing a news story, where you haven't got 1,000 words. You have to get all of that information into 100 words or 200 words. How do you do that? And at that point, you've got to be absolutely clear. So I think that background really helped. And as I said, Michael was a trade journalist and a journalist as well. So, having that background, I think really, really does help.
I remember I had Alice on here. She was the first guest, and she said something similar, like being able to do proper journalism and write within the confines of, a column is fantastic sort of training ground. It's like, intervals on a treadmill, for if you want to do a running analogy, like really kind of tunes you.
And also being able to step back, really, because all you're doing as a writer is passing on information. You should never get in the way of the story. The story's not about you, the story's about that. So it's about the people who are making it. So their words are more important than your words. You're just helping to tell that story. So you should never get in the way of it. It was interesting when we were doing ScotchWhiskey.com, RIP, which is a great thing. It was quite hard. I hate to say it, but it was quite hard finding new writers, because new writers, because of the way in which communication had changed and because blogs were coming out, they were front and center. This is my opinion. I'm not interested in your fucking opinion. The story is not you. The story is this glass. The story is that distillery. It's got nothing to do with you whatsoever.
That is
and it was really, really hard.
Main character vibes,
to get
as
good
they
writers.
say. People want to be the main character in their own story. And I mean, there's a lot of journalism. I mean, a lot of food journalism, especially restaurant critics, have kind of really pushed that sort of thing. You know, if you read a Jay Rayner or an A.A. Gill, yes, you know, there's quality assessment of restaurants and food in there, but oftentimes there's a personal anecdote and there's the experience of it thrown in there too, and it's entertaining for that reason. Yeah. You can't have all of it like that.
No, you can't. You know, and it's fun to write that stuff. You know, I mean, when the Sense of Place or the Japanese book. You know, obviously, you know, I am a character in it because, you know, it's my road trip. But actually, I'm in that road trip to interview people and to find out what they're saying. Yeah. I think it's an important thing for new writers to understand.
Yeah, so new writers, what advice would you give? And also, I think a lot of people...
Don't
do it. Don't do it.
Do not think you're going to get rich quick, guys.
Okay, next question. I think one of the things people struggle with writing, and I struggled with it and probably still struggle with it, or at least when I'm sort of starting a new project, is tone and voice. And what do you stand for? What is it? How do you communicate? How do you put yourself across? What makes you different as a writer? How do you find that?
I can't answer that question because, you know, my tone is my tone. You know, it's just it becomes who you are, really. Yeah. Sorry, I don't think I can really.
No. I mean, I think that's the correct answer. It was kind of the answer I was expecting. But but it's true. I mean, it's like sort of saying, how do you, you know, I want to be a model, but I can't work out how to find my face. You know, well, it's like your face is your face.
Yeah. The longer I've been doing it, the more I'm interested in that wider picture. You know, I'm still a whiskey geek, you know, so I still get excited about lactobacillus and yeast and barley varieties and all of that. But actually, I'm more interested in the other stuff. Yeah. So maybe that's where the tone comes from.
Yeah. Right. Let's just thinking about timing. Let's taste something else. Okay. We've got a couple more to get through, and then we'll what have we got left? The rye. Oh no, we've got the rye. The other Brittany one.
Yep.
That one next, maybe.
Yeah. Probably that one.
We'll have to. So while I'll pour these out, and then you can pour them. You pour it and maybe talk about it. So what have we got here from Brittany?
This is from Brittany. So this is from a distillery called La Mine d'Or, and it's Galad, which is, and it's from 2018 at 44.5. So one of the new Breton distilleries. So Armorik was the first. Armorik's been going a long, long time. And they were on their own. It's the first whiskey distillery in France. Still making really good whiskey at the moment.
They've got history making other stuff, right?
They started off doing liqueurs and everything, and then kind of pivoted to whiskey. Essentially, when French supermarkets took off, small producers essentially had no market left. So they then pivoted to whiskey, but then realised that the only way they could sell their whiskey was actually through supermarkets. So all they could sell was actually a relatively cheap blend, which was okay, but it wasn't great. And then they went, enough is enough. Got Jim Swan in, and the whiskies, which they've been making over the past decade, are just really, really good. And it's a whole number of really good distilleries in Brittany. This is one of the newer ones. So then in the Forêt de Brocéliande, which is where Merlin is, it's a whole Arthurian thing. So Galad is Galahad. Local barley, so Breton barley, and also local oak as well. So there's a little kind of steer in a different direction.
And is it virgin oak?
I can't remember for this one, to be perfectly honest. So it's either Breton oak or Norman oak, you know, but essentially the same subset. So 2018. A little bit drier than what we've had so far. We started off with quite sweet whiskey.
Yeah, we did.
This is much, and I think you find that really with some of the Breton whiskies that, you know, they tend to be a little bit more cereal focused. A good sweetness on the palate. Soft fruits, nice acidity to it. Quite juicy. You know, there's quite I'm always intrigued by whiskies like this. You think it's going to go one way, where you put it under your nose, and then suddenly, oh, hang on a minute.
Yeah.
Where did you come from?
It's got a nice prickle to it on the texture front as well.
And it's not too strong. It's, as I said, 44. But I think you get really, really promising. So yeah, some good distilleries coming out of that part of France. Not that they would consider themselves even being in France.
Yes, of course. No, just as Cornwall doesn't consider itself in England. Yeah. Yay for Cornish liberation. Let's just get that across. So, I mean, we've talked about New Zealand, we've talked about France, we've got a couple more sort of world whiskies to try. There's a lot of really exciting stuff going on across the world, and a lot to be optimistic about, I think, in terms of the breadth of flavour, the cultural influence we're going to get to taste, and just the sheer quantity of products. Let's be a bit more pessimistic. What are your biggest... Okay.
Great.
Finally. What are your great concerns for the whiskey category, current and going into the future?
We're undoubtedly in a tough time. The industry is way over capacity. The industry was over capacity probably about 5 years ago. And we're talking globally, not just Scotch. Too much whiskey being made. Even when I was writing the Atlas, essentially every country, distillers from every country I'm talking to, and we're going, well, our market can't sustain it, because our market's full, so we're going to export. It's kind of a, where are you exporting to? Because every other market is full. So yeah, that has to be dealt with. There was this. It was almost as if the industry, and I'm talking about I'm kind of switch back to Scotch, really. The majors essentially have been making exactly the same mistake as they made in the 1980s, 1990s. Nobody there has read their whiskey history or understood their whiskey history, and there are not enough people, in fact, there are not any people from that generation still working in those companies, or even from the generation after, still working in those companies. And exactly the same thing is happening. You have a new generation coming on who are, I don't think they're necessarily turning against whiskey, but I think they feel disenfranchised. So the narrative is wrong.
How so?
I think it's just got boring. I think two things have happened. One, because whiskey, it was good times, so everybody in the major companies has only seen good times. And then there was COVID. And suddenly they just went gangbusters because everybody thought they were going to die, so we might as well just get drunk. And then it fell off the cliff, and it's kept going. When it's slowed, but it's still going down. So, and I think as a result of that, of those good times, what the majors did was actually just send whiskey out there. If we put it in the bottle, put it out there, people will drink it. This is what you want, this is what you want. And at no point did they actually do what a good bartender does, which is, what do you want to drink? What would you like to drink? Because what people would like to drink wasn't necessarily what they were pushing out. And then because of this huge COVID spike, they decided to continue with this premiumization, even if it's less but better, and hike the prices up to an absurd level. So the people who do want to drink whiskey now can't afford to drink, or feel that they can't afford to drink whiskey. So price is one factor within this. It's a major factor within this. But people are still buying great whiskies. Armorik, would be a great example, sitting there about 50 quid a bottle. People are, well, great, I can afford that. It's still a treat, etc. But I think the overall image of whiskey, especially the overall image of single malt, has become, it's a drink for others, for the haves, and I'm not have, I'm a have-not. I can't afford it, and I'm not going to drink cheap blends. I'm just not going to drink whiskey because I don't think it's for me anymore, which is a much deeper malaise that exists within whiskey at the moment. I've just been looking at the half-yearly shipment figures for Scotch, and it's slowed. It's fine. It's still above 2019 levels. There's had the slides, so that's good. Apart from single malt. Single malt has declined by 20% since COVID.
Yes.
Bulk whiskey is keeping Scotch afloat.
Yeah. Because
and
do you think that's markets like India, which has still got this sort of emerging premiumization thing?
Yeah, everybody thought, well, the tariffs have come down. Therefore, India's going to save Scotch. Well, India is saving Scotch, but it's at the completely other end. It's bulk Scotch going in for cheap Indian blends. So there's a lot of issues that the industry has to face, and it comes down to storytelling. It comes down to getting out selling rather than taking orders. When the going is good, you just walk into a bar, you walk into a retailer going, right, how much do you want? Here's the order book, how much do you want? This is when you really show your mettle, by going out and actually selling, and finding out and listening to people and understanding your history. So I ultimately I'm optimistic. Whiskey will come through, because it always does. And every 20 years, the same thing happens.
Yes. But we don't want to have to wait another 10 or 20 years for this sort of...
Yeah, because single malt saved it last time, but I don't know who's going to save it this time.
Maybe blends.
Maybe it is blends. Yeah. Maybe it is guys like Woven.
Yeah. Maybe.
Even at the tiny, tiny scale, doing enough to shift that dial. Maybe it's world blends, maybe it's this, maybe it's that, but it needs to be addressed.
Did you see this coming? Because as a whiskey historian, so you've had the Patterson scandal in about 1900, wasn't it?
Yep.
You had obviously Prohibition.
Mm-hmm.
Then there was the whiskey loch. Like you say, this repeated itself over and over again. With friends, I've been saying for years, this bubble's going to burst. But even when I've said it, I've been like, will it? Yeah, will it? And
times me.
Yeah. And there's just this sort of, because the good times are good, and there's this sort of optimism that sort of carries you irrationally through it. And now that we're seeing the beginnings of this, well, we're around the middle of this downturn. Hopefully, it doesn't get too much worse. It's so obvious that it was coming, especially with COVID, as you say, thrown in the mix, which is just sort of unexpected.
Yeah, it distorted the whole market.
Yeah.
But the industry as a whole should have realised that this was happening, because, if you looked at it, it was pretty obvious that it was going to happen, because there was way too much whiskey getting made. And the irony and the tragedy to some extent is there is more whiskey being made in the world than ever before, and there's more great whiskey being made in the world. The diversity of whiskey is unparalleled. It's a hugely, hugely exciting time for the category. And that is my little kind of, that's my little beacon of hope, that there is all this great stuff and great thinking going on. But what we have to do is then convince people to try it. So, and maybe it's because I'm a writer, but it comes down to the narrative. It comes down to big business decisions, but, and it's, and a lot of it, I think the small distillers who are under pressure because they can't just pivot to bulk, and they have, higher costs, etc. But I think they're thinking, if their companies are well run, they're the ones that are going to lead you out of it, because I don't think the majors are. The majors are running around like headless chickens. The impact of something like Diageo deciding to close Roe & Co., which is just completely idiotic. They spent 20 million setting up, which is, a drop in the ocean in terms of Diageo. And then to close then a distillery which was doing amazing and great innovative stuff. But the message that sends out to a new industry, Ireland is just beginning to, all these new distilleries just beginning to put their whiskies out, and all of a sudden the biggest distiller in the world is shut down its distillery. What message does that give out to investors? It means that, there's a deeper
They're
problem.
a weather vane, aren't they?
Yeah,
There's a responsibility that comes with that.
It's a hugely irresponsible thing to do.
Yeah.
I'm saying not just because Laura's a friend, but it's a hugely irresponsible thing to do.
I think the problem with the big players is that there isn't a sort of, when you have a small business or a family-run business, there's a kind of long-term viewpoint that takes hold. and you see this especially in the multi-generational businesses where it's like 5, 6, 7 generations, they're thinking 20 years ahead all the time.
Yeah, I mean, Willie Grant. I mean, look how William Grant is being run. They got insane amount of capacity in Glenfiddich, but they'll still produce, but they might calm it down. But they always take the long. Whiskey is a long-term business.
Yeah, of course.
And you cannot apply short-term FMCG strategy.
This is it. When you have a corporate structure that's thinking about, well, what are we doing in Q4 this year?
Yeah.
And when's my promotion and pay rise coming so that I can move up to the next bit? Because I'm not even interested in this part of the business.
Yeah.
I want to be in that part and I want to be on the board or whatever.
Yeah.
It's not compatible with a business like whiskey where it's a very patient and long game.
Yeah.
And it's these long and slow ebbs and flows.
And it's the pressure. I mean, I sympathise to some extent. That if you're a listed company, if you're a FTSE listed company, and you have to hand in your results not every half year, every quarter, and you are Diageo, and all of a sudden you've had a bad quarter. All of a sudden, the money is going elsewhere, and you put out share warnings and profit warnings and all of that. I sympathise with that. The pressure they're under, but the pressure they're under is to have a quick fix. Yeah. And whiskey never has a quick fix.
Yeah.
Whiskey can never be instantly reactive because of the nature of the beast, because it takes 3 years minimum.
Yeah, I mean,
to turn that around.
This is it. I mean, the sort of structure of proper P&L and quarters and how those businesses are set up isn't really appropriate for a product like whiskey. Just shouldn't. It shouldn't be applied to if it's fast FMCG, like you say. Great, but this is not that. No. And so if you're going to behave in a way that it is that, but it isn't, then you're likely to get stung very quickly because you're just going to be thinking about the next quarter or maybe that next year. Yeah.
So I'm looking to the smaller distillers and the independent distillers to be able to kind of work our way out of it.
Spirits business reported in May that single malt Scotch auction values plunged by 53% from October 24 to January 25.
Yeah,
with volumes dropping 21%. I mean, the auction houses had it so good for so long now, right?
It was a bubble. It's that bubble you were talking about. Yeah. It's going to burst. Oh no, it keeps going up. No, it's burst. Yeah. Because it was ludicrously overpriced.
Yeah.
And again, the annoying thing is that then, initially the power of the secondary market and the fact the secondary market and then the auction market, etc. Was going ballistic. A lot of the bigger distillers were kind of going, well, hang on a minute, we're putting this out at £200 a bottle, but it's immediately then flipped for £1,000. So, okay, well, we're going to charge £1,000, and then it just kept going up.
Yes.
But they kept feeding it. They kept feeding the beast, and were so starry-eyed about what was happening in this super premium esoteric level that they took their eyes off what was actually happening on the ground and took their eyes off the mainstream, because whiskey ultimately is built in the mainstream. So I'm delighted that the auction prices have burst. Delighted.
Yeah.
Because it was way overpriced. It's absurd. I mean, I was speaking with Martin Miller from Number One Drinks the other day, because he'd found the tasting sheet for the first tasting of Karuizawa that we did years and years ago, not long after they bought all the stock. And it was a whiskey exchange. And he was remembering the discussion that we had about pricing, because this Japanese distillery nobody had heard of,
and it closed for a reason.
Like £100 a bottle. I think we might be a bit punchy on that.
What year would this have been?
2010 maybe. Yeah, probably.
Ago, is it?
It was around about then.
Oh, that long ago.
Yeah, around about then when they bought the stock.
It's
crazy,
isn't it? It's
crazy. So yeah, I'm delighted that market has gone.
American whiskey as well. Apparently, it's declined 20. It's the first decline in 20 years, from 23 to 24. So a similar thing going on there, just overproduction,
overproduction. Yeah, the market is absolutely stuffed over there. So yeah, serious overproduction. Yeah, I think I think some of the big ones, you're going to see some interesting casualties, which is sad because it's been quite a very exciting category. But yeah, just way too much.
We're talking about auction houses, and so sort of leads on to and Karuizawa, high value bottles or perhaps sentimental bottles. Do you have any bottles in your collection that you will never open?
No, I think anything. I don't really have a collection. I've got a selection of bottles. The majority, I've seen 95% have never opened. And there are some, which are simply kept for, emotional reasons, nostalgic reasons. But yeah, they will be open.
They will get open eventually.
Yeah,
it's got to be.
You find the right time.
Yeah.
And occasionally, I find something going, oh yeah, I never really opened that. Why have I kept this? And yeah. And I have occasional purges of what's on the shelf for it. It's just been sitting there.
What happens to it? Just thrown or blended into some mixture like Craig does?
Yeah, some of it's blended. Some of it's blended into various jars.
Various jars buried underground.
Quite honestly, into various jars, and yeah, I'll do blends for friends and stuff. Some will go to one of my local pubs, and it'll be sold there for charity because obviously
nice.
It's not tax stamped and everything, so that given away to friends. But it's amazing, you think, a bottle of whiskey. Yeah, I've got another one. That's a bottle of whiskey. That's going to last me a month. 2 months, 3 months, 6 months. Yeah.
Do you buy much whiskey?
No, I'm not allowed to buy whiskey. I mean, if my wife, sorry,
you've been spending the money.
It sounded like a northern comedian. Take my wife. If Joe found out I should be buying whiskey when there are 1,000 bottles in the house, I would be killed. So no. I mean, he said immediately. Occasionally, I'll buy it. If it's charity, if it's a charity bottling, raising money for a good cause. Yeah, I'll buy that. But no, otherwise, no, that'd be absurd. I'll buy wine, but I won't buy whiskey.
Given that you're tasting so much whiskey, although apparently less than you did in the past, do you have such a thing as a daily dram, a bottle that you go to just because it's easy and convenient?
Yeah, and I've got a few. Actually, and one of the things I've been doing on the site really is having a little section just called on the shelf, which are the whiskies that I would reach for, as a daily dram, and then another one called in the cupboard, but the cupboard's not locked. But this is one that they tend to be more expensive. So yeah, I've got a few that I will dip into. I'm mostly we're recording this, when there's still relative heat. So, at the moment, most of them are kind of highball suitable drams, because it's just a phenomenal way to drink whiskey.
Have you found your preference towards a daily dram or just general styles of whiskey has shifted over the years? Have you moved through eras of liking older whiskies or smoky whiskies, or is it really just?
Yeah, I think early days, like so many people, I kind of fell in love with smoke, and I think my tastes are just more Catholic now.
What does that mean? You've got to be careful with that kind of claim.
Especially from Glasgow. I drink it because it's of great quality.
Yeah,
I've been hugely lucky. I mean, it's quite ironic actually, Tris, that I've been kind of ranting about, the overemphasis on super expensive whiskies and really old whiskies. It's destabilizing in terms of the image of the market, not because the whiskies themselves are necessarily inherently poor in quality, but kind of as a result of ranting about this, I seem to have been getting huge, significant amount of really, really old whiskey coming across the desk.
Nightmare.
It was a nightmare. And they're all really, really great. So yeah, I'm kind of, yes. And I think the tropical fruit thing,
yes,
which everybody's kind of fallen in love with, which I think is a really positive thing, that character, that whiskey rancio character that you only get with relaxed maturation in a refill cask, and it just kind of, I'm just going to let these sit.
You're going to let this go.
Let this go. those are really, really compelling, really compelling drinks for me. But a lot of younger ones, you know, I mentioned Armorik earlier. You know, that new wave of distilleries making phenomenal stuff. You know what the guys at Dornoch are doing. You know, Rassi, Armorik and Nagnain, I'm a big fan of, and the revitalized Glen Scotia.
Yes.
You know, and people finally realizing that Ben Nevis is actually a really great whiskey. So yeah, it's interesting kind of stepping back and seeing the way in which those kind of preferences in terms of the market move, because nobody would touch Ben Nevis a few years ago.
Yeah.
And now it's kind of, we want funky stuff.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and speaking of younger, oh no, we've got another one to try first, don't we? But I was going to say, speaking of distilleries that excel at young whiskey, we've got the Chichibu here to try. Awesome. But shall we try that rye first, quick?
Yeah. Let's have
because this is pretty smoky.
Let's have a 50 of this rye. I know nothing about this, so I'm really excited to.
I think that glass there is
clean.
That's yours, but yeah. Lower Saxony.
So. All I've done is read the label, actually. So,
Hardenberg.
Estate grown rye, 95% rye.
Yeah, 5% malted wheat.
Yeah.
Okay.
So very, very intrigued by this one. I've been really impressed with German rye. You know what Bastien and the team are doing at Stork.
Yeah.
On European rye, I'm. You know the reclamation of rye. You know, this is where rye started.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, you mentioned Kiro already. Again, I probably pronounced it wrong as well. I mean, that's a fantastic European rye whiskey.
Awesome.
You know, it's like eating bread. You know,
Helsinki rye is incredible as well. There's some really, really great ryes coming out in Europe.
It's got that kind of nuttiness to it.
It's quite perfumed though. Yeah, it's hugely aromatic. Because rye can have that kind of floral note on.
Well, it can go kind of sort of cherryish, marzipan-y, and then that can extend into flora, I think. But you're right. I would never think that I was nearly 100% rye.
Not at all. It's very mellow, very gentle. Just that little bit of spice coming through in the end. I mean, one of the greatest whiskies that I've tried in the past few years is Todd Leopold's 3-chamber rye.
Yes.
Which is just filthy, oily roses and lavender and...
Yeah. Have you been to the distillery?
Yes.
Yeah, I went there as well, and he showed me around it. I think it was only very recently they'd had it installed at the time. So I don't think they had mature whiskey off it at that point. I don't know, maybe.
It's just awesome. But once it's opening, there's a slight kind of weird but a pleasantly weird kind of medicinal thing going on.
It smells and tastes like a grain whiskey to me, but not really rye. It's like
kind of elastoplast and germaline, in that kind of Savlon or something.
Yeah.
A balm for the soul.
Yeah, it's all right.
It's good. Yeah.
Right, let's try the Chichibu and then we'll finish up. We're nearly there.
It's been an excellent chat.
Oh well, I'm glad you've enjoyed it.
I've
very much enjoyed it. So we've got this.
Am I coming back next week?
It's sort of next week. I'm kind of selling my own product. It's not my product, of course.
I chose this.
But you chose this. But it's the Black Rock bottling of Chichibu, which is all sold out now. I think we've got maybe 3 bottles of it left or something like that. Peated Chichibu.
Yeah, which is you don't see much of.
No.
I love the guys at Chichibu. I mean, Ichiro is just a genius.
I mean,
a lovely man. Love it. And Yumi as well.
I just think I think if I had to pick a distillery to drink for the rest of my life, it might be Chichibu. It rarely misses a beat. And obviously you've visited there loads of times and I've been there once, and looking around it is incredible. The tasting room with the range of products, and is there when you start tasting all these products side by side, which is a rare treat because, the price is pretty punchy and worthily so, I think. You're like, Jesus, every single one of these has got this precision and this stylistic thing to it and this sort of energy, but then also this clarity of flavor.
Yeah.
It's like, it's fine art,
he's astonishing. And that attention to detail, the fact that, using Japanese oak, as much as he can, but then also learning how to malt, and having a malting floor, but actually going out and malting, and then working with local farmers to grow local Japanese barley varieties, and the stuff they're doing there with golden melon variety, it's astonishing. So he goes the extra step.
That's a barley variety, is it?
Yeah. So, and he's the kind of godfather of the new Japanese for his 150 distilleries in Japan now. But and all of the ones who are serious about it, Chichibu is a university for these guys. I've got a huge amount of time for him.
And when you were mentioning about young whiskey, which I got to say is like, I find myself continuously more drawn towards it when it's great, because it has that more of that expression of place. I think when you sort of start to taste the sort of fruitiness from the ferment and the barley and everything.
Yeah.
I mean, this sort of typifies that. I mean, you'll know better than me, but I think I've seen many whiskies from them over sort of 8, 9, 10 years old. Nearly everything is young, right? I mean, maybe that's changed now. I don't know.
Yeah, it's changing now. There's a few. He showed one last year at the whiskey show in London, which is a 15-year-old Mizunara, and everybody was going ballistic.
Yeah, I bet they were.
This is incredible. And he went, yeah, I'm not releasing this until it's 30.
Wow.
Because it's not Mizunara yet. And it's long-term thinking.
Yeah, I mean, by the time we recover from the current thing and then come back into the next boom, that 30-year-old Mizunara Chichibu will be worth the price of a small country, I should think.
This is stunning. This is really stunning. The balance of the peat is just gorgeous.
Okay, so while we enjoy this, I've got a few quick fire questions. Yeah, I mean, it's yeah.
Oh, cheers. Yeah.
There's I get like some melon in there along with the smoke, and so it kind of reminds me of that like Parma melon salad thing.
Yes, exactly. No, it's so bright. That wonderful kind of tingling spice that you always get with Chichibu. That beautiful fruit, like fruit blossom, that kind of runs through a lot of them. Stunning. Yeah.
It's beautiful. So we're going to finish on quickfire questions.
You've heard how long my answers are. Yeah.
You can take as long as the quick questions. You can take a long time with the answers if you want to, and I may even indeed comment back. But it's entirely up to you. Right. I actually asked the same quickfires to Charlie when I interviewed him.
Did you?
He got exactly the same ones.
Okay.
So it'll be interesting to compare the answers. But they're not difficult questions.
What does he know?
Well, they might be difficult questions, actually. Most memorable or favourite dram you've had in the last year?
Most favourite dram. I just talked about it actually. Yeah, 3 Chambers still.
Oh, God.
I think
Leopold.
I think it's one of the most important whiskies of the 21st century.
Okay. Favourite distillery to visit?
Ooh, that's a good one. What am I going to say? Waiheke.
Nice. Favourite place?
I didn't expect that one.
That's a long way away. Everyone's going favourite place to share a dram. So it could be a bar, a castle, a windswept hill, beach.
Depends on the weather.
Yes.
I think my favourite place to share a dram is round the fire. And I mean, that could be a fire indoors, ideally outdoors with friends.
Yeah. There's something about the energy of a fire, the sort of primal.
Yeah.
You think about all the generations that have gone that have sat around fires and watched it flicker and glow on the faces.
And conversation slows, because everybody's kind of, you're listening at the same time, you're drawn into the fire. So, yeah.
Well, it's because it's black everywhere around you.
Yeah.
So it's like being in a black studio with just light in the center. And there's something so intimate about that creates a different kind of connection.
And it's really interesting, actually, Tris. I just kind of thought of it. When you're talking to somebody and talking to new distillers, and say, when did you have the idea? So many of them said it was a group of us on holiday, sitting around the fire with a bottle, and saying, we could do this. It's
magic. This magic happens around the fire. Yeah. And not only does the idea come about, but the conviction to see it through as well. Yeah, that's cool. Final question. If you could sit down for one last dram with anyone from whiskey history, who would it be and what would you drink?
Oh, nice one. Who? All right, right. I'm going obscure, and my mind will probably change in a second. But I would like to tag along with Martin,
Right.
his journey in the late 17th century around the islands of Scotland, which is the first report of social drinking of whiskey, which was in a circle.
There you
And there's probably a fire. Actually, that just kind of boom. And that was his first description. I would love to kind of tag along with Martin to actually see.
Which island was the...
I was on Lewis.
Right, okay.
And yeah, just to see how whiskey was being consumed.
And you would drink presumably the local Mountain Dew.
It would be, yeah, it'd be wild. And we'd probably have a little side dish of gannet, of guga,
Lovely.
just to wash it down.
All right, Dave Broom, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I've thoroughly enjoyed this. Thank you.